fourth step in developing a business is location, and this builds mainly upon the demographics that you studied it back in step 2. So make sure you only follow this step once you've developed your demographics and seen the area or population or where you're going to start your business. So once you've had that in mind, there's a few factors you need to consider regarding the location of your business in a specific area. One of them being visibility. So it must be seen by people. If it's in an area that's very hidden, then it's possibly likely that it might not get as much attention as it would if it were on, let's say, a main road or a main street, or there was a big billboard that advertised it. The second thing you need to see is parking space, and especially the wheelchair access, so you can give access to the disabled and there's enough space for people to park their cars so they can actually come into your business. If it gets too overcrowded, then it creates a bad situation for everybody. The third thing you need to look at is the hours of work or the limitations in the building or area that you want to work. If you work in a strip mall somewhere and all the other shops close down at, let's say, 5 o'clock, then it's a bad idea to start something like a pizza store that implements skip the dishes, because you won't be able to keep your store open until after 5, and that will leave you with a lot of lost revenue that happens in the evening times, which are probably the most busy times for food stores. After you've determined all of that, try to buy a business in something like a preferred location that is a very developed area, such as a high school, a university, somewhere beside a park or in a recreational area, because it's very developed and it will attract many customers to you, such as especially high schools and universities, because the students at lunchtime or dinner time get very hungry and they might want to come to your business or they might want to buy something from you. Now we're going to discuss the fifth and the most important step in the whole process, which is the business plan. Now, before we actually get into this, we need to discuss the 3 types of expenses and costs that are associated with the business. The first thing that comes up is a fixed cost. So a fixed cost has a flat relationship and it does not change no matter how many sales you have. So X here represents the number of sales you have and Y is the number of expenses. So here we can see no matter how many sales you have, the expenses never change. So this could represent something like, let's say, rent, because no matter how many sales you do, the rent of your store will never change. It will never go up or down. The next thing is variable costs, and with this, it's a linear relationship that goes up incrementally with X and Y. And what happens is as sales go up, expenses go up along with it. And this could be represented in something like, let's say, food costs or royalty. These are the most common examples of those two, which is food and royalty costs. And the third type of cost is semi-variable costs. Now, these costs are normally associated with employees or wage times, and it goes up in a really weird way, and it goes up like this. So it goes up incrementally like that. And that means it goes up to a certain extent, it stays flat, but then it goes and jumps up to another amount. And then again, it stays flat for a certain amount, and then it goes up. So these points of intersection represent you adding, let's say, in one more employee to handle more sales, and in order to promote more sales. So now that we've explored the different types of costs associated with starting a business, we're going to look at an example of what a fixed cost would look like in a real business. So let's say you want to start a burger business in Calgary. The place you've looked at is 1,000 square feet, and the rent for the place is $50,000 per year. The cost of the utilities for that place are $6,000 per year, which means the total rent and utility cost is $56,000 per year. After that, you take in the other office expenses that you would need to invest in. And those are things like internet costs, telephone costs, or whatever, those types of other costs that are added on top of the fixed costs in the rent and utilities. Once you have that, now you need to calculate the payroll of the employees that you're going to hire. Right now we're assuming that there's no semi-variable costs and it's just a linear relationship between sales and expenses. So first we look at how many employee hours per day we're paying for. The amount I got was 18 employee hours per day. How did I get this amount, you ask? I got it from this example. And in this example, I assumed that the shop was open from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., which means it was open for a total of 12 hours per day. I assumed that the rush hour times were lunch and supper, which in total take up 6 hours of those 12 hours in total. In those 6 hours of times, I have 2 employees working on site, and if I multiply 6 by 2, then that gives me 12 employee hours. When it's not rush hour, in the rest of the 6 hours, I only have 1 employee on site, and 6 plus 12 in total gives me 18 employee hours per day that I'm paying for. Now I'm going to take the 18 employee hours per day and times it by the number of days that the shop is open. Let's just assume that the shop is open every single day of the year for simplicity's sake. That gives me a total of 6,570 hours per year that I'm paying for. Now once we have that amount, we need to multiply it by the wage that I'm paying each one of my employees. In this example, I said that the wage I was paying the employees was $15 per hour, which is the minimum wage, but I added CPP and EI, which brings it to a total of $16.80 per hour for each of the employees. Once I multiply these two amounts, it gives me a total payroll of $110,376. And once I add this amount to the other two, my total fixed cost is $188,376. Now that we've calculated the fixed costs of our business, we're going to calculate the variable cost of what our business is. Now, how do we do that? For this, we have to look at the 2 most common variable costs in a food business, which are the food costs and the royalty costs of the business. Generally, in food businesses, the food cost is around 25 to 30%, and for our example, we're going to say it's 30%. If the food business is a franchisee, let's say, then the royalty cost is normally in between 10 or 15%, but for our example, we're saying it's 12%, so we're having it in the middle. Now, if we add 12% and 30%, that means our variable cost is 42% of the sale price of one burger. Now, if we take the price of one burger, which we assumed is $6 per burger, after looking at the cost of burgers in other stores and comparing with the competition, we can multiply $6 by 0.42 and find that the variable cost per burger is $2.52, and that's our total variable cost per burger. So now that we've calculated the variable costs for each burger and the estimated sale price of each burger, we can calculate the gross margin on each burger, and the way we do that is we take the estimated sale price of each burger and minus the variable cost of each burger. And so that's $6 minus $2.52, and that gives us the gross margin for each burger, which is $3.48. What this gross margin is the gross profit you make on each burger. Once you have this amount, we come to a very crucial point in calculating our costs, and now we have to calculate the break-even point. This is the most important thing you have to calculate in this whole process because it shows you how many burgers you have to sell or how much product you have to sell in order to get a net income of 0. So you have no loss or no gain. And the way we calculate this is using a formula, which is your total fixed cost divided by the gross margin on each burger. And that total gives us 54,131 burgers that we have to sell each year in order to have no loss or no gain. So if we were to graph that on a graph, then this would be burgers sold, and this would be profit, and it would penetrate here, let's say. Anything below this line, anything to the left of 54,131 would mean you make a loss, which means the only way you can actually make money in this business is if you sell more than 54,131 burgers per year. Now, if we look at how much money that means you would have to make, then we multiply it by $6 per burger, and that means our company would have to make $324,786 in order to get an income of 0, so no loss or no gain. So anything you make after that point on each burger, you'll make $3.48 per burger after the break-even point. This is very important because you have to tell yourself, will I be able to sell this many burgers? Will I be able to sell this many burgers and make this much money in order to even reach that break-even point in the first place? So now that I've calculated the break-even point of my business, I'm thinking that I need to get some finance for the bank. Now, if I do want to get some finance for the bank, they're asking for around $50,000 profit in my business. So now, I'm thinking, how many burgers do I need to sell, or how much money do I need to make in order to satisfy the amount that the bank is asking for? The way I do that is I take the profit that I'm looking to make, divide it by the gross margin, and that gives me the number of burgers I need to sell on top of the break-even point in order to make $50,000 profit. So once I have the 14,368 burgers, I add it to my break-even point of 54,131 burgers, and that gives me a total that I need to sell 68,499 burgers that equate to $410,992 in order to show a profit of $50,000. Now, the reason why this is important is because this is the first step that you need to implement when you're making a business plan to show to the bank. When the bank asks you for the business plan, they want to see these scenarios, like how much profit are you expecting, what are your estimations for it. So this is the minimum that you can do to start making a business plan. Now, the sixth point that we're going to discuss in starting a business is the interpretation of the rental agreement. The first thing that you need to see is try to implement a business that's under your company's name and not actually under your own name. Now, this might be a little confusing. In the US, it's called a limited liability company, and in Canada, it's called a corporation. And basically what happens is that the liabilities that you owe to the landlord or the bank are only limited to what you invest in the business, and it can't influence any of your personal belongings or assets outside of what you've invested in the business. So let's say your business fails, right? If you've invested only $25,000 in that business, then the only thing that the landowner can take from you is that $25,000. They cannot even touch your personal assets or belongings and cannot take them from you at all. But there is also another very important point that you have to consider is don't sign a personal guarantee with the landlord either. Because if you do, then they are able to legally go to court and take some of your personal belongings in order to fulfill the rent expectation that you haven't fulfilled because your business has been bankrupt. Once you've looked at these 2 points, you want to make sure that you can sign an exclusive agreement with the landlord. What this means is that no other business of the same kind as yours or the same type as yours can come into the same plaza or mall that your business occupies. So if you have a burger shop in the mall, then that means no other burger shop can come and occupy that same mall. That means you'll have higher chances of making sales and you won't have competition to compete with. After you've done that, you want to make sure that you can get a lease for at least 5 years, plus another 5 years on top of that that you can renew without the rent costs soaring way too high. So you want to make sure that for 10 years your rent cost will not soar through the roof exponentially. Because what happened is an example of a business that failed was in Calgary. A business after 3 years tried to renew its lease, but the landlord asked for double rent on the business, and that's why he could not renew his lease for the business. The seventh and final point in opening a business in Canada is the interpretation of the franchise agreement. Now, if you're not opening a business in the name of a franchise, then this point doesn't apply to you. You can end the video if you want now. So the first thing you want to do in a franchise agreement is to review the conditions of the initial franchise fees, the yearly royalty, the marketing fees, the transfer fees, the condition of transfer to self-business, the consequences of the closure of the business, and the competitive clauses if you want to close the business as well. Now, these are all legal terms you can review with a lawyer, so make sure to go over them thoroughly when you read them with your lawyer. Once you review the legal terms and conditions, check the boundary of the area of your franchise and try to obtain a big geographical area so that another person doesn't open a company of the same franchise and competes with you in a small space. So an example of what happened that was bad because they didn't review the franchise agreement was that one shop opened in downtown Calgary, but the other same type of shop opened just a few meters away from it, and both of those businesses started failing a lot, and none of them could make any money because it was such a small distance between the two businesses, and it was the same type of franchise. That's why you want to make sure you obtain a big geographical area in your franchise agreement. If it is a new franchise by any chance, let's say you want to open a Dunkin' Donuts in Calgary because there aren't any Dunkin' Donuts, then you might want to try to obtain a large exclusive agreement to the whole city. So if the main company sees that your business is booming really well in the city and they want to open a second shop, then the first person they'll come in order to look for an owner is you. They'll ask you if you want to be the owner of that business, and they'll ask you to take a leadership role in that new franchise.